Hi, I thought it might be helpful to give some feedback on the modifications I've done to my Porsche Boxster 986S. I've had it now for 13 years, so give you a little bit of background. So I've been involved in modifying cars since I was sort of 12 years old really, sort of modifying mopeds through to motorbikes, cars. Involved in rallying a bit, built my own cars, had a bit of a garage, modifying various things. Lots of cars in my life, wasn't really a Porsche fan. Decided to get a Porsche Boxster quite a few years ago, 13 years ago. So started modifying it straight away really. Usual thing, there wasn't much about on YouTube or internet when I started, so sort of use my own experience really for that. So started as most people do, de-snorkel. So I think when we kind of mention performance, it's worth mentioning really that Porsche didn't get it wrong. They know what they're doing. Like most manufacturers, they've got certain criteria they need to meet: comfort, reliability, fuel economy, noise, etc., etc. So whatever you do to your Boxster is going to have an effect. That may be in terms of cost, it may be in terms of fuel economy, noise, comfort, etc. So you don't get anything for free. So de-snorkeling was the first thing I did. Again, as most of you might already know if you've Googled. So noise was one of the feedback, or induction noise was one of the feedback from customers at the beginning, so they put a little snorkeling to slow the noise down. Does it give you any power? No, I don't think it does. And a lot of the stuff I'm going to say is my opinion, and that's it. If I can back it up with anything I will, but generally it's my opinion. I'm sure if you've got any criticisms, whatever, put them in the comments, that's fine. It's my opinion. So de-snorkeled, looked at the air filter. I always change the air filters anyway. Put in a K&N filter, so that's been on now for pretty much 13 years. No problems whatsoever with oiling up of the MAF. I clean the MAF every 12 months anyway with a squirt of electrical cleaner. The other thing I noticed, which I haven't seen anywhere, is underneath the car attached to the airbox is a little, I've got it here. So this is described by Porsche as a water drain. It's got two, I don't know whether you can see, two little filters in it. So a couple of things really. First off, whatever you do, those filters are going to be dirty. Clean them or whatever. It's a little bit big for my liking for a water drain. I'm reckoning you could probably drain a gallon every couple of minutes out of that size, which if you've got that much water coming in, it's a problem. The other thing is the direction it faces. It faces over the exhaust manifolds. Now, back when I was starting modifying cars, most cars had an air intake over the exhaust manifolds, getting hot air for the carburetors, warm it up. I think there's probably, and again this is my opinion, there's probably an element of that. The other thing is that actually I think this is a bit of an air intake as well. So one of the things I did, a couple of reasons. Firstly, it gets in the way of the coil pack number 5, so you need to remove it anyway when you change coil packs. The other thing is that I think you get a lot more air in, or not a lot, but you get a bit by taking the filters out and getting that air in. I think it's a secondary air intake. That's just my opinion, as I say. So I removed mine completely. I've had no problems. Did it increase power? I would say it's cleaner. The pickup is a little bit cleaner by having it off. But again, it's not been on a rolling road. I can't give you any more information with that really. So, but yeah, certainly it's a quick, easy thing you can do. I've left it off, it's just easier to get in the coil pack, so I've had no problem. whatsoever. The initial Boxsters or the prototypes had the outside wing air induction a little lower down, which was taking up crap really, so they moved it up slightly. Did they take into account this modification? Who knows? But it's something you can do. It doesn't cause any harm. I've not had any problems with it. Does feel as though it makes the pickup a little bit cleaner from about 3,000 revs on, but that's it. Keeping with the induction side, looking through, so the other thing that I did fairly early on was I changed the throttle body, mainly because it choked up with oil a little bit from the AOS. I put on the bigger one, which I know there's loads and loads of stuff on the net about that. I can't remember what it came off, 911, whichever. It's a larger throttle body, not too difficult to do. Did it make any difference? I would say it changed the power band. Did it give any more power? Probably not. May have even lost a little bit of torque. Keeping with the induction system, when you do that you may well have some troubles with the pipe that runs from the MAF through to the throttle body. I replaced mine with an aluminium tube. Notice that it actually sits on top of the oil cooler. The oil cooler is on the top of the engine, so you get a bit of heat transference there. So wrapped it in exhaust wrap. It's a cheap fix really. So you get more cold air. When we look at performance, there's kind of three areas really that you can look at if you want to increase the speed of your car. And when I talk about speed, I'm really talking about acceleration. So engine power, weight and gearing. They're the kind of three things. So in terms of engine power, it's what you can get in as quick as you can get in, as quick as you can get it out, which is why turbo cars are just so much easier to modify, because you can force the air in. You're a little bit stuffed with an NA engine. Anyone thinking they're going to get 400 power, 400 brake horsepower out of their 986 Porsche, you're not. It's as simple as that. Anyone that's got a 986 also is probably a little bit old now, so you're probably not even getting the original horsepower you've got. So exhaust wrap the intake, again it's cheap. Most of the stuff I've done is fairly cheap. Induction wise, as I say, de-snorkeled. I've removed the what they call the water drain, although I'm not quite sure that that's probably a full picture on that. Pickup is a little bit better, it's more at the top end. I tend to drive the car anyway higher in the rev range, and a lot of what I'm going to say is down to drive the car. So that's a personal choice. Would it make any difference if I put it on the rolling road? Maybe. I think it's worth saying that a lot of what I've done, I may get more if I put it on the rolling road. A flash tune is not worth doing. It's going to potentially lose your power. So back in the day when I would be putting Para 40 DCOEs on a car, you'd say what you'd done, they would send you it pre-jetted, and it would be roughly for that car, whatever it was, Escort or whatever. You'd then put it on the rolling road, and pretty much every time they would change the jetting. For me, that's what a standard remap is. If you send your ECU off or anything else, you need to go on a rolling road. There's no point, really, from my perspective, just doing a flash tune or a remap without it going on a rolling road. So from the induction side then, I've got K&N filter, hopefully a little bit more air coming in that side, but also cooler air going into the throttle body because it's wrapped. If you condense the air, it's denser, you get more in. So it's always worth trying to keep the intake air as big as you can. Back in the 80s, 90s, I had a little bit of play around with Mark 1 Astra GTE where we moved the airbox, we put mushroom filters on various things. Got lots more noise, we put it on the rolling road just as a bit of fun really. We lost power all the way through. I've not done it myself, I've spoken to a few people that have changed to the 987 airbox. They all report pretty much the same thing. It was lots of tears, lots of skin, etc, etc. And I know there's stuff out there saying yes, you got more power. Again, a lot of it was with rolling road tunes as well. And I think if you spent that much effort and grief doing it, you're already predisposed to actually thinking you're going to get something from it. So haven't done that. I don't really intend to. I don't think there's much point. It's not exactly massively restricted in terms of the air coming into the engine anyway, to be fair. In terms of what did I do next, so next thing really the suspension. So one of the things that makes the Porsche Boxster absolutely brilliant is the handling of the car. I've changed all of the suspension at least once. Going through some of the things I've done that I think are worth doing, I changed all the springs to MO30 Porsche Motorsport springs, definitely worth doing. A little bit stiffer, not too much lower, it's great. Suspension wise, I'm currently running Coney adjustable shocks. Worth doing. There is a problem, although there is adjustable, you have to take them off to adjust them. There lies the problem, that is not quick. Would I do it again? No. I would keep the front, they're great, I can open the bonnet, I can adjust them and do for turning, etc. They're great. Probably, it's probably due, they've been on probably 10 years. 10 years now. I'm probably going to stick some sports Bilsteins on the rear. I will keep the adjustables on the front. Or if you're starting from scratch, my advice would be go to coilovers all round with that. Other stuff, polybushing. So polybushes, I polybushed the front anti-roll bar. I ummed and ahed with going for a thicker anti-roll bar, but most of the flex is actually through the rubber bushes. Rubber bushes they're okay, but they deteriorate quite quickly over time. They've got quite a bit of flexing. So polybush the front anti-roll bar, yep, I would recommend that. It's cheap, it's effective, you get some bang for your buck with that. Don't have a front strut brace. I don't think you need one on these cars, apart from the fact that one of the things I notice is that the slots at the top of the strut tops, which is how you adjust your negative camber, they move if you're hard. The better you get the car handling, the more pressure you put on, they move. The only reason I would put a strut brace on, and I'll probably make my own, I just haven't got round to it, is actually just to stop those nuts from sliding under hard cornering. The rear's a waste of time. It's really solid with that. So the coffin arms, so Porsche suspension, Porsche brilliant. If it doesn't, if it's working, they don't change it. It's not broke, don't fix it. It's really basic, but it's been copied by so many performance manufacturers because it works. Downside, it doesn't last that long without renewal. That said, fairly cheap. Coffin arms are all the same, front and rear. So looking at that, looking at the loads on the vehicle, I decided to polybush the rear coffin arms, leave the front standard. Feedback on that, to be honest, So in terms of getting the exhaust gases out, one of the first things I did as well was to change the back box. A couple of reasons: I do like noise. The other is weight. So back to performance, if you can reduce the weight, you get a quicker accelerating car. Simple as that. It's a bit of an old beast, the old back box. It is heavy. So I've got an eBay drone box. Did it drone? Yeah, it droned. That said, I bought some baffles, which I think are about £5 each. I haven't got any around, so I can't show you. They are somewhere around. Pretty much the same as the old two-stroke bikes I used to mess around with and put them out, to be fair, to make a bit more noise. They go in the backs. they do stop the drone. They quiet the engine down. I didn't like the sound particularly, but yeah, you can do that, that's fine, and then maybe take them out as and when you want them. They're just screwing right at the end of the tailpipe, so they're fairly easy to do. The next thing I did was change the manifold. So the manifold, when you change it, you also need to change from bolts to studs. They do snap off. The bolts, that is, not the studs. Loads of kits out there, they're fairly cheap, and it just makes life so much easier if you do decide to change them. Again, I went for the cheap eBay jobbies, race manifolds. Took the old ones off. Absolutely appalling. The manifolds on there, and I don't think for 1 minute that Porsche are that bad. Porsche know what they're doing, and these are just such small primaries. The shape, the bends, everything is rubbish. I think, you know, I know there's a lot out there that they were restricted, blah blah, for the 911. I think there might be an element of truth on that. So they are really bad. I would suggest you change them. They're minuscule in terms of the primaries, and the shaping is awful. Fitted easily, not a problem. The sound changes, did it increase horsepower? I'm going to stick my neck out and say yes, it did. Yeah, of all the things I've done on the car, that's probably the biggest improvement I felt through the seat of my pants. Hasn't been on the rolling road, so you're going to have to take that with a bit of pinch of salt. That's my opinion. I put on, a couple of years later really, I put on some race cats. That improved again. It improved the sound, lovely sound. It improved the pickup, the power, I should think. Again, not on the rolling road, that's my own opinion. Ran it with those for about 3 years, I think, and it was getting a bit of a problem. They were cheap, 200 cell cats, I think they were. They weren't the most expensive ones, so quality could be the reason behind it, but it struggled then to get through the MOT, so took them off. I did notice a difference again since I took them off, so I think they're worth doing if you can. So yeah, exhaust wise, I think there's room for improvement, shall we say, there. Going back to the engine, other thing I did pretty much straight away, same as I do with every car I've got. I put a magnetic sump plug on it, change the washers. Nobody ever does that, garage is included. Yeah, it just means you can see any kind of swarf and everything else, and if anything's going wrong you can kind of pick it up quite early in order to do it. I always run K&N oil filters, the performance ones, which filter a little bit better. They're cheap, easy enough to do, so it's £1 or £2 more than maybe a standard one. So yeah, other stuff, usual kind of replacement bits and pieces that you put on the car. One of the things that bizarrely I found was really worth doing was changing the coil packs. Changed them a couple of times now, and I've just, even though I've got a OBD reader and it's coming up no faults, changing the coil packs has made a lot of difference, just in how smooth the car runs and how smooth it picks up. I've used, first off I went with Baru. Everybody says use only Baru coil packs, which I did. Recently I've done Intermotor. I don't know, but I think maybe the Intermotor ones are a little bit better. Don't know, just saying. But yeah, so plugs, change, usual thing, haven't noticed any difference from that. But yeah, worth changing the coil packs fairly regularly. Some of the parts, you know, need replacing regularly. Suspension I've mentioned previously, not designed on a Porsche to last a car's lifetime. You need to be changing them, I don't know, every 15,000 miles, 20,000 miles. They're not expensive, the bottom arms, the drop links, really not expensive. The trailing arm bits, yes, they're a little bit more expensive, but it's certainly no grief and it's no difficulty to change the coffin arms. You get new rubbers and obviously the ball joint on the end with that. The other the problems I've never really broken. I had a core pack go down once, but aside from that, really no problems. I've been across Europe, the UK, short journeys, long journeys. Mentioned I always tend to drive the car quite hard in terms of rev range. It's always up, I never change into third like a taxi driver, and as soon as I pull away, so I'm mostly in first and second most of the time. So yeah, bits and pieces that I've kind of done around the engine bay I've mainly mentioned, with the exception of the air oil separator. So I have had, I think, 4 of those. Had quite a few issues early days, sort of, yeah, pretty much straight away as soon as I got it. If I drove it around town for a while and then put my foot down, I'd get the smoke, maybe a bit of smoke on startup. I'd change the air oil separator, I'd try genuine, I'd try other ones from Porsche Design 911, etc. A little bit of research, and I noticed that Porsche do a competition air oil separator. I think it's about 800-900 quid. It's a huge amount of money, which kind of made me think, right, okay, so they recognise that this is a problem, otherwise you wouldn't do an upgraded version of that. So I made a system up with a catch tank, which again you can see on my other YouTube channels. I tried to keep the piping as short as possible, so there's not much more volumetric air in the system. I've been running that for probably 8 years, I think, and I've never had a single problem with white smoke or anything else. I think it's one of those things I've done that have gone, yeah, that kind of works really. I mounted mine in the boot, mainly because I wasn't sure whether I was going to have to drain it regularly. I made the assumption, because I was constantly getting the throttle body getting a bit of oil mist on it, so I was regularly cleaning it. I say regularly, once a year, with electrical cleaner to clean off, the same as I would the MAF. Yeah, I've never ever drained it. I went for quite cheap air oil separator, filled it with wire wool, as was standard back when I was playing with racing cars, etc. Not a very good sealing system on the one I got, cheap one, and I think in hindsight go for something more expensive. If I did it again, would I put it in the boot? Probably not. I would fit it in the engine bay, but I think that's one of the things it's worth doing. There's a couple of quick cheap things you can do. I've mentioned wrapping the intake tube before it gets to the throttle body in heat wrap. That one's definitely worth doing. It means you get colder air into the system. It takes a little bit longer to warm up. You know, that with removing the water drain is going to take a little bit longer for your car to warm up. But yeah, the change for the air oil separator, critiquing, I think, yeah, that wasn't their best design, if we're being honest. Bodywork wise, I haven't made any real changes to it. I've changed the roof, so rather than have the plastic screen soft top, I went for a glass one. Porsche give you, I think it's 13 hours or something like that to change it. Myself and a mechanic mate, used to be one of my service crew, did it, thinking no chance this is going to be 13 hours. It takes, I think it took us 8 hours. It's a 2-man job. Yeah, it's not difficult, you just need to be slow and careful doing it, but it takes time. Is it worth it? Yeah, you've got a bit more weight with the glass risk, but love the fact I've now got a heater, rear screen demist rather,